welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate. Hello and welcome to Landscape Photography World, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Joining me this week is Ben Alldridge, a multifaceted photographer and former marine biologist turned software engineer and space weather enthusiast. Originally from Brisbane but now residing in Launceston, Tasmania, Ben shares his unique journey into landscape photography inspired by Tasmania's breathtaking scenery. Known for his spontaneous 750-kilometre drives in pursuit of perfect skies, whether clear or stormy, Ben combines his love for both art and science in his work. In this episode, Ben discusses the launch of his first photography calendar, the evolution from film to digital in his 20-year career, and the influence of his marine biology background, particularly in projects involving biofluorescence. His approach to photography is both playful and purpose-driven, with a strong emphasis on storytelling, goals and conservation. Ben also reflects on the balance between creativity and science, competition strategies, and the complexities of commercial work. With his signature sarcasm and eclectic interests, including music journalism and a peculiar fondness for vanity basins, Ben offers a refreshingly unconventional perspective on capturing the natural world. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Ben. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
Cheers, Grant. Thank you very much for having me. I'm doing pretty well. I'm perpetually busy and just started actually offering workshops.
No.
Released my first calendar yesterday, so it's
Well done.
all going on. But yeah, thank you very much for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I love your work, and I think you do some pretty amazing stuff down there in Tassie. You've got a whole island of photographic delights. What is that? What made you a photographer? What is it that got you into photography and in particular landscapes?
So photography's been a bit of a weird one for me. I've been doing it for over 20 years at this point. I started out on film like everybody my age did at that time. Yeah, I was just constantly porting my cameras around to concerts and parties and things like that. And then around 2016, 2017, when I moved to Tasmania from Queensland, these landscapes are actually what I'm seeing in the books and stuff like that. So okay, I can actually do something with this, and committed to it. And that's pretty much what drove me, just the passion for what's out there and getting to actually experience these things. It's a pretty phenomenal place to get to hone your craft, I must say.
Yeah, it's not too shabby. There's one or two spots that are worth taking a photo of.
Yes, I've definitely been pretty lucky to get to a few of them, but the bucket list grows every day. So.
Yeah. So where did photography start to become art for you? Most people start out and they're taking photos of the family, the cat or the dog or whatever, recording their life, or maybe just going on trips and doing happy snaps travel stuff. At some point, serious landscape photographers had this little switch go off in their head that says, it's art. It's not just...
Yeah. That's it. And for a lot of years, I used to be very heavily involved in doing painting, and I've always been an author. So I do a fair bit of journalism on the side and that sort of stuff. And because I was constantly doing that, my artistic sort of output was always driven by those processes. But one day it was like, but I'm an artist and I know how to paint. And I know how to tell a story. Why the hell can't I do that with a camera? So it became very much this communication medium as a conduit for these experiences that I was having. And that was basically just what drove it. The need to say, hey, this is cool. You should have a look at this stuff. And hopefully that's come through over the years. I'd like to think that it has, but
I don't think you do too bad a job.
Hey,
I guess I'm interested in that storytelling element and the way that people use the camera and the images that they create to tell a story. How do you go about that, and are you preconceiving the ideas for that story before you go out and start collecting the images, or is it more you're telling the story after the fact once you've actually identified, okay, that's a shot, there's a story?
it's very variable. There's no rhyme or reason to it that's okay, this is the creative process and this is how things are done.
Yeah,
More often than not, it's I'll be somewhere and I'll be immersed in a scene and something will happen that'll just spark. So I'll get really nice light or it'll start snowing or something like that.
sure.
And it's just that overwhelming feeling of being in that moment and wanting to share that not only visually, but I guess almost viscerally in having that narrative behind it so people can be like, okay, I can go to this place fully. And so photography's always been a storytelling medium for me. I so I'm autistic, which I've never really made any particular secret about, but for a lot of years, like in my teenage years and that sort of thing, I was very isolated. And the photography thing, it was I don't need to describe something if I can physically show it.
Sure, sure,
Um,
sure.
and yeah, it was very much just a conduit to understanding and explaining the way that I conceived of things. And yeah, it's just grown from there. So
Yeah, amazing.
thank
So,
you.
what are the main things that have influenced your photography career?
So I, prior to getting really serious about photography, I was actually working as a marine biologist. So I was working very heavily with coral and rare fish and things like that, and just seeing
Oh,
the most amazing things day in and day out. That particularly has influenced the project that I'm working on at the moment. So I don't know if you've seen, but a lot of the work that I'm doing with biofluorescence,
yep.
so basically just things that live, that glow under certain types of light. So that was all driven by the experiences that I had working as a marine biologist because I was
Yeah,
doing that every day. And so understanding the science and the way things work, that's very much the message and central thesis for a lot of what I'm doing. So that scientific aspect, hey, the botany aspect or the weather aspect or those sorts of things, and trying to actually deliver a functional message like that somebody can take away at the end as well.
yeah.
And that's basically where the creative process has been driven, just wanting people to feel that fascination. So
Awesome. Awesome. And is it important to have goals and projects for you? You mentioned that you've done quite a bit there with the bioluminescence or fluorescence or whatever. That's one project. Is projects a big part of your photography, or is it just something that you work on as you go?
so I think these days what I've graduated to, I for a lot of years was a very opportunistic photographer. Okay, we have the conditions. This is a location that I want to shoot. This is a vague idea. Let's go and do that.
Yeah.
In doing that, I found that I've just built such a critical backlog of images there that I have literally never seen. There is tens of terabytes of just raws that I have never seen. So recently I've reckoned that it's easier to not do that and just fill up hard drives idly. So the project aspect has very much become my primary focus these days, especially because a lot of it's tied to research as well. Especially with the glowy stuff, I'm trying to figure out why it works and then how it works and documenting all of it. So that as a project, I can say I'm willing to dedicate as much effort as possible because I know there's going to be something out of it. Whereas the other stuff, it's yeah, I don't really have that luxury of knowing that there's going to be something at the end.
Yeah, cool. And in terms of, I'm interested in the science behind driving some of the work that you're doing. Is there room for personal expression in that? Because there's a scientific behind it, or is it more that's strictly all about the science, and then the other work is all about personal expression?
I has always, for the majority of my life, been this. There seems to be this general understanding that society at large has that science and art can't be intimately related. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
they're always cast at opposite ends of the
That
spectrum.
the old left brain, right brain thing. Yeah.
Exactly, and to me, it's more like a horseshoe. You go around one extent and reach the other, and then it loops back again. Because I'm hanging on that ragged edge of what we actually know in terms of science, it does become art again because
Mm.
nobody really understands it. You
Yeah.
can't really have science that nobody understands because it's this nebulous thing and it's just
Yeah.
pretty pictures. So yeah, I'm trying to loop back around on that horseshoe and make it a full circle if I can. I like to hang out in spaces that people haven't been before. So
Nice. In terms of when you're out shooting and doing work, do you use a scientific method in terms of experimenting with your photography, or is it
yeah,
more fluid? It sounds like it's fairly structured in the way that you do it.
in some ways, it's tricky because there is basic tenets to everything that you're doing. That certain things, like especially with the fluoro work, that certain things are going to produce some level of glow.
Yeah.
Understanding A, how much of it, and B, exactly what it's going to look like, you never really know. So you're always approaching it with this curiosity of, hey, what's the next thing we can discover? And yeah, that just fascination of what is possible there, it very much informs my creative process. I like to have an idea, but I like to be surprised.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
that's just the way that a messy and unmedicated autistic mind works. It's I've got all these different things going on at any one time, and just flicking all the levers as time permits.
Also interested in what you've discovered so far, particularly about the fluoro stuff, because I'm really keen to understand it myself because I've seen it and it's absolutely incredible when you get the right conditions and you just see all these bright blue greens and turquoise colors floating
Mm,
around or in foam or whatever in the waves. And
yeah.
I've always wondered, okay, so how does that happen? I get the bacteria and a few other bits and pieces, but what have you discovered?
So that realm, like bioluminescence, that is similar in function but distinct in the way that it works.
Yep.
Like ghost mushrooms, bioluminescent tides, those sorts of things. They happen purely by chemical process.
Yep.
What's happening here? This is actually a purely physical process. So
Right.
effectively, this is hanging out on the edge of quantum physics. And yeah, so it's basically just atoms are being smashed with this really high intensity light. And
Well,
as they do that, they get really excited and send out light that's slightly lower intensity. And because it's lower intensity, it shifts back down the wavelength spectrum. So it goes from UV into warmer colors like your
yeah.
greens, reds, and yellows.
Okay.
And yeah, that's basically what it is. So the things that I've discovered, I've actually got quite a large body of work there that I'm working on as a portfolio for a few competitions. But I will say that kangaroos don't glow the color that you would expect them to, and
Okay.
it looks utterly terrifying. I'll send you a photo after this. It's
Yeah, okay. I'm into
yeah,
seeing that.
yeah, no, it's pretty special. Yeah, so it's just yeah, things like that. Back in June, I was down in the Southwest National Park, just hanging out camping, sitting there in my camp chair in the dark, just by myself as I'm wont to do, and heard a scratching around. And there's an eastern quoll digging at the fire pit that was beside me.
Okay.
Okay, I wonder what's going on here. They just ended up hanging around for about 4 hours. That's okay. In this situation, I don't really want to miss this opportunity. So as far as I know, I'm the only person that has Eastern qual fluorescence in situ in the wild,
Wow.
and it's pretty phenomenal. Like they're candy pink and bright blue. It's
Okay.
surreal. And seeing it in person is like, I don't know if I'm hallucinating this because I'm experience isolation madness or what, but
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, no, seeing that. Yeah, so there was about 4 or 5 of them over the course of a few hours.
You
Yeah,
hadn't been eating
docu-
any of those mushrooms.
oh mate, I felt like it, but yeah, no, this was a bona fide one.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually managed to get a little bit of video of it as well. So it's
Amazing.
yeah, nice little thing to have in the bag.
Yeah.
All of those will be yeah coming out once competition season's over, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, early next year we'll see how we go.
That's good. You mentioned that
Yes.
you've got your new calendar out. You got any biofluorescence in that?
Yeah, so the cover is actually a biofluorescent image that I took up at Low Head Lighthouse. So there's a nice, really rocky outcrop around the leading edge of the lighthouse as you go down towards the shore, and there's always penguins and things like that around. And yeah, so I was hanging out there and trying to shoot some astro, and it wasn't working. So I was like, yeah, bugger it. And yeah, pulled out the torch, and yeah, sure enough, that's the front cover.
Awesome.
And then I've got another one in there of some trees that I got up in Queensland that have got some absolutely wild, just intense highlighter yellow fluorescence as well. So
Yeah. Cool.
a few little bits and pieces. I tried not to go too heavy on that theme,
Yeah. Fair
but
enough. Fair enough. I reckon you could do a whole calendar just on it.
that's actually the plan next year. So
Nice.
yeah, because I'll be able to release a lot of the stuff that I'm sitting on. It'll be yeah time to get it out there and yeah actually having a printing process to do it because yeah as it turns out when things are 100% saturation it's very hard to print them. But
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine.
problems for future, Ben. What's
Yeah. Fair
yeah
enough.
trying to figure out how the hell to do something that nobody else has done. You got to break
Yeah.
a few eggs in the process, unfortunately.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm interested in how you've gone with, obviously, a lot of this is around science and the environment and how that sort of plays into our base of knowledge around the environment that we live in.
Yeah.
How have you gone about using that to try and educate for things like conservation and environmentalism?
So at this point, I haven't been able to do as much as I'd like to in terms of actually being directly involved with organizations,
Sure.
just simply because A, I haven't really had the time, and B, I don't think I've really had enough of a profile to drive that in any meaningful way as yet.
Okay.
But I think having the Nature Photographer of the Year stuff and a few of the other things behind me now, I've reached that point where it's okay, I can start doing that. So I've got a few people in mind to reach out to. I'd like to work with Bob Brown Foundation,
Yeah.
like Land Conservancy and that sort of thing. Because yeah, the island is an absolutely phenomenal place. I want to do everything that I can to try and preserve that. Another one of the projects that I've got is working with Tasmania's iconic trees.
Yeah. Right.
So, so obviously I did pretty well with the shot of the Fagus this year. And yeah, so I'm doing other stuff with Maenocida gums and the leatherwood and Huon pines in the Tarkine and those sorts of things. So we've got some absolute stunning flora and trees around Tasmania, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Absolutely.
another one that I'm very heavily focused on getting out there.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned competitions. How important are they to your body of work?
I reckon that probably about 70% of what I edit is in the end for competitions.
Okay.
For a lot of years, what I've been doing is primarily just been, I haven't really been in a position where I've wanted to do anything commercial. So I've been fairly notoriously bad at releasing print releases and that sort of stuff. I post very sporadically, as I'm
Yep.
sure you've noticed. But yeah, no, the competition is always a very big goal. Not necessarily because I'm looking to do well. Like that's always a nice thing when you get accolades and that sort of thing. But
Sure.
a lot of it is the actual motivation to edit in the first place, because
Right.
without that, I'm not depending on a paycheck. I don't have to edit. There's no real incentive to do it other than pure joy. And then, yeah, the community of the actual competition circuit that I have been involved in, some of my best friends have come from those. I'm in probably 3 or 4 group chats just with different photographers that I've met over the years at these
Sure.
different things. And yeah, I would say that to anybody that's listening, that's been considering entering something. If you go in there expecting to win, you're going to have a bad time. But if you go in there just with the curiosity of what's possible in terms of feedback that you may get or the people that you may interact with,
Yeah.
they're worth the entry fee almost every single time.
Yeah. Right.
I cannot recommend entering and getting involved in that more highly enough.
Mm.
Yeah, it's definitely not the world for everyone, but if you can hack it, it can be rewarding.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. You got to go into it with the right mindset, and that mindset, as you say, has to be what's possible, not okay, I'm putting this in because you're not going to put in something that's a pile of rubbish. Well, unless you don't know what good looks like. But
That's
going into it with what you think could be a prize-winning entry, but you're not necessarily, you have to go in with the mindset that's obviously there's other better photographers out there that may come up with something that beats yours, and depending on the judges and who they are and what they're thinking at the time. And there's also, I think trends influence the outcomes of some of these competitions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, there's always going to be ones that have a greater reputation
Sure.
or a bit more prestige to them. And those are usually more predictable in what their judging results will be.
Yeah.
If you're involved in some of the smaller ones, even the ones that I've been involved in, you're always surprised. And even if you know that your images are good and generally what the judge will be looking for, you can never quite know which of the pool that you put in will do it. And it was actually funny. There was 3 photographers that I told to put into a competition that I was also entering this year.
Yep.
Like I'd seen their photos and I was like, yeah, no, they're pretty special. You should do something with them. And all of them were like, yeah, no, I don't know. And I said, trust me, I know that this is going to be good.
Yeah.
Of the 3, every single one of them won a prize and beat me in the competition that I recommended them to enter.
Nice.
That was
I get that as success, though.
that's exactly it. If you can look at somebody's work and say objectively, you have the capability to do something with this image, please don't overlook it. And it
Yeah.
actually pans out. Yeah. Having that critical eye, I guess the drive to want other people to succeed as well.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a valuable tool that I've been given. So
Yeah, that's good. What is success to you in your photography?
it depends on the day.
Okay.
Like sometimes it's seeing this image in my head, because I'll get like really intense flashes of an image that I want to make occasionally.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
so I'll see exactly what the finished product should look like, and quite often it's actually almost haunting because it's this nebulous goal that you're trying to run towards. You've only got this one moment snapshot in mind, and you can spend hours upon hours trying to craft something that looks like that.
Yeah.
So,
I know people that have
sometimes,
waited months for exactly the right conditions to go to
yeah,
exactly this spot that they saw months or even a couple of years ago that says,
yeah,
okay, that's the shot I want. These are the conditions I want. And they go out and they're lucky enough to get the conditions. Sometimes it
yeah,
takes them, as I say, years to get that one shot.
yeah, exactly. I think the field craft aspect, being able to land something that you've labored for in the
Yeah.
field, is definitely something you do feel an edifying level of success from. at the same time, photography as a craft for me, I think where I differ from a lot of people is it's just a conduit. It's a
Yeah,
conduit for me to get outside. It's a conduit for me to experience new things and meet new people. So if I don't nail the shot that I've gone there for, sure, I'll be sore about it. But at the end of the day, I've still achieved what I wanted to by getting out and actually
yeah.
involving myself in the world. So to that end, I very rarely leave disappointed. Like I usually come away with something that's yeah satisfying at some greater level.
You mentioned the commercial aspect and not concentrating a lot on that. Where is photography in terms of a hobby? Is it a part-time commercial pursuit, a future commercial pursuit? Where is it in your life?
Ask me that in a couple of weeks, and we may have a different answer. But
Okay.
I've always typified myself as a reluctant professional, in that I recognize I'm capable of delivering work that people want to engage with.
Mhm.
I've clearly reached a point where people are looking up to what I'm doing, but at the same time, it's yeah, I'm just totally mentally blanked.
Okay,
My
that's
brain
fine.
just disappeared.
Not a problem. We can do a reset. That's fine.
What was the question again?
So
I got
it's where is photography in your life?
yes.
Is it a hobby? Is it a commercial pursuit? You said you're a reluctant professional.
Yeah, no. So I am definitely a reluctant professional in that I don't rely on it for an income.
Yeah,
And if I did, I would be doing terribly at it because I'm about 40 grand in the hole. As far as balance sheets go for professional, I'm not doing particularly well.
fair enough.
But yeah, no, I definitely want to be pushing into doing more education and outreach sort of stuff with it. I've reached the point where I think getting multiple messages every day of people saying, "Hey, can you teach me how to do X or Y?" I should probably finally cave in and listen. So I think that'll be a growing thing in the next little while. But
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
for now, reluctant professional amateur.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. What was the last time you actually got out and where did you go and why did you go there?
So the last time that I made a concerted effort to get out was on not May, October 11th.
Okay.
So we
I
had
was
a
going to say that was a
G4.
while ago, May.
Yeah, I totally missed out on that. I did go out, but I was also in Queensland under about 500 kilometers of cloud. Yeah, I managed to totally miss that one. Yeah, got luckier in October, thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I ended up over on the East Coast, just hanging around near St. Helens. Some of the rock formations there are stunning.
Yeah. St. Helens is a beautiful part of the world.
I absolutely love it there. Some of the dark of skies that we have, being right beside the sea, having all of the rocks, it's just,
Yeah.
you could not want for better, really. A perfect straight south shot for Aurora. It's,
Nice. Yeah.
yeah, so I ended up shooting most of the night on a 9 millimeter f5.6 lens that was that bright. So,
Yeah. Well, mind you, that I think I know the week you're talking about in October because I was sitting by the Murray River near Mildura
yeah,
on one particular night. And it was nice and dark and saw this sort of pink glow in the out of the corner of my eye in the south, and then it started to spread north, and I was taking shots direct west from where I was
yeah.
sitting and getting aurora shots, and it was kind of like that's weird. That doesn't feel right.
Yeah, no, and that's how it was for me. Because I had the 9 millimeter on, I was actually tracking the Milky Way setting in the west as well.
Yeah, right,
So it was
right.
basically south and then 100 odd degrees to almost the northwest.
Yeah,
Two-thirds of the frame is full. It's
yeah, yeah.
even with the two-thirds moon, seeing that it was yeah, pretty stunning. It was actually the first time I've ever seen both naked eye red and green together.
Yeah, yeah.
So very good experience. I highly rate it for anybody that's not managed to get one yet.
I, I think it was fairly amazing. I haven't posted any of the shots that I took because where I was, it was not great for aurora photography. I wasn't set up thinking, oh yeah, well, the aurora's going to hit, off we go. That
Yeah,
wasn't what I was thinking. I was thinking more of dead trees in the river and water
yeah,
birds and that sort of thing. But yeah, sitting by the campfire watching the aurora just appear. It was, oh, that's an added bonus. All right, I'll get the tripod out and off we go, and we'll have a bit of a shot. But they're not, the foregrounds and whatever aren't really worth it.
Hey, it's an event like that. I think it's one where you do have to sit back and just take it in.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no point trying to work with it because there's just so much going on. No matter what way you point, you're going to get something. So just,
Yeah, that's
let the camera run, let it do its thing and soak it in. So I ended up sitting on the beach in a camp chair with a can of Bilsons, just kicking back and enjoying it.
nice.
It was phenomenal. Two cameras running time lapse, the phone running real time video, and hey, it's definitely a hell of a place to spend a night. I'll tell you
Absolutely. And being St Helens as well, I mean, you wouldn't have too many interlopers with torches and things wandering around either.
I actually got really lucky where I was. So there was a group there that hung around for probably half an hour after dark,
Okay.
and they had never seen the aurora before.
Yeah.
So they were sitting there on a little camp mat or whatever, just sitting there looking up at it, and this is pretty phenomenal, guys. And I'm like, yeah. And yeah, they basically vacated, and then I had the entire of that peninsula to myself for the entire night. Yeah, no, it was definitely a beautiful experience. Yeah, nights like that are really part of a big reason why I do it.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were asking earlier, it's therapeutic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You see that light, and yeah, it cleanses you a little bit, I think.
I think you 100%. Yeah. Interested. I know it's probably way too early for you to think about retirement, but if you could retire at one of the places you've shot, where would it be?
That's a very tricky one. So I'd say because I've seen a lot of things that a lot of other people may not necessarily have, I would probably find myself either in the Tarkine or the Southwest. Those are very special places to me. The Southwest, part of the reason that I was actually down there when I got the qual 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. Actually, the day of my 35th birthday, I was admitted to hospital dying of sepsis.
Oh.
So I've got quite a lot of mental trauma from that. I ended up in and out of hospital for 4 months. I had 10 surgeries in the space of that time. Yeah, no, that sort of messed me up pretty mentally. Yeah, that's why I was down in the Southwest. As hey, I need to go somewhere and escape from this. I need to cleanse myself a little bit. And that was, one of the things that really drove that. That's, an interesting experience when you've got somewhere where you can go and every time you're there, you come back feeling better.
Definitely one of the places where you can go and get lost for a little while in your own thoughts and not have to think about the rest of the world.
Absolutely. It's far enough away from everything that you're isolated, but it's close enough that you don't have to worry about being too lost if you don't necessarily want to be.
Yeah.
Once you're back on, it's remote enough, I guess, is probably the takeaway. Yeah. But going there, and I think that'd probably be the place.
What's your most memorable photography experience?
That is actually a hard one. There's so many of them. One of my favorites is probably from when I shot Aurum, the shot that I won the landscapes at Nature Photographer of the Year with. So that was literally the very first time that I'd ever seen a Fagus in my life. I'd only moved to the island 6 months before that, so I was totally green on the idea of it all. And I went back that day and the subsequent day 4 times with 3 different groups of friends just to go and see these trees that were conspicuously literally right beside the road. Right there, I didn't need to walk to them or hike. You'd see.
So you weren't doing the overland tracker or anything?
Yeah, no, I'm physically incapable of that. So I've got a broken back. So
wow.
95% of everything that you've ever seen from me has been taken within 500 meters of my car, just simply because that's the only place I can get to, or generally has been. And yeah, the Aurum just happened to be one of those that was that. Getting it during a really intense snowstorm that was blowing 120, 130 kilometers an hour that day. And yeah, while I was shooting it, my hair froze.
Wow.
Like me being a Queenslander, totally unfamiliar with Tasmanian weather. No
Yeah.
beanie, no gloves, no nothing. And yeah, my hair froze because of at that point I had quite a large afro, and yeah, that was a definitely made it one to remember. So when it came out and it had done as well as it was like, okay, I appreciate that.
Nice, nice. What about horror stories? Have you had any dramas while you're out and about?
Very first Aurora that I shot, I managed to knock my camera and yeah, quite badly broke it. So I was without a camera for about 3.5 months.
Oh,
And funnily enough, that was actually the impetus for me to learn how to edit properly.
okay.
I don't know if I've managed to do that yet, but yeah, because I didn't have the camera there, I wasn't able to really create anything. And at that point, I was in a really strong creative kick. Like I was taking photos nearly every day, and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, having that thirst to satisfy not being able to actually do it, it forced my hand into to actually getting good at the craft. In some ways, I guess the horror story was a worthwhile one.
Came
But,
out okay. Yeah.
yeah, no, it definitely worked out okay for me. So
Well, what we're talking about editing sounds from what you said with the 10 terabytes or whatever it is of images that you haven't seen yet, that you're not straight into editing when you get home from a shoot unless you've changed your ways.
it depends. For the most part, it's just basically I'll shoot photos for the sake of shooting photos. That's pretty much always the way that it's been. Like I could go out and I could literally just point a camera with no card in and be satisfied 90% of the time.
Okay.
Some things you come home and it's okay, I really need to get on that. A, because I
Yeah.
need to actually get it out there, and B, because I want to see what the hell I've done.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes you see things on the back of the camera and they they grab you in a way that makes you take attention.
Yeah, fair enough. And what's the editing process look like now? Is it mostly Lightroom, mostly Photoshop, combination, something else?
It depends on the day and depends on the purpose. If I'm working on one of my proper finished images, in the end, I think the final edit of Aurum, just in terms of minuscule dodging and burning layers and things like that in Photoshop, there was probably about 100. So it's
Okay.
very minor adjustments that I'm making in specific places, but
Yeah,
the way that I'm doing it, it's been very informed by my past working in painting and light and that sort of
yeah, right.
stuff. So yeah, very heavily in Photoshop a lot of the time. Everything will go through Lightroom to begin with. I'll get it to a point where I'm happy with it. And then there's a whole bunch of plugins that I use just as ease of life. So I use Tony Kuiper's TK panel,
Okay, yep, yep.
uh, Jimmy McIntyre's Raya Pro.
Yeah, I use
Those are,
that. Yep.
yeah, I would be absolutely lost without being able to do like proper luminance adjustments, actually
Those
targeting.
two make luminosity masking so much easier than doing it manually, going in through all the
Yeah,
channels and everything and faffing about. Just, yeah, it
yeah,
does my head in. I know how to do it, but it does my head in.
yeah. That's exactly it. It's like when something is so difficult to accomplish it, you're compelled not to do it.
Yeah.
And that's why I always say to people, get these damn plugins. You're wasting your time. And
Yeah.
by wasting your time, you're less likely to want to do it. You know,
There's even free ones. I think Jimmy McIntyre's got an easy panel, which is a freebie. So,
yeah, that's
it
exactly
doesn't
it.
even have to cost you anything to get something
Yeah,
like that. You can start luminosity masking for nothing.
yeah. But even then, when you consider it on a how valuable is your time basis,
Yeah.
if I'm producing 50 luminosity masks an hour, what's my hourly rate at work?
Yeah.
I don't want to be wasting time on things that I'm doing repetitively, and I can do better by clicking a button. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. So yeah, those sorts of things. And Nick collection and Topaz collection are the other two big ones.
Yeah, right.
So, color effects and Viveza and Nick collection, absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I use the Viveza. It's very useful if you use it properly.
yeah,
Occasionally, I'll use it 5 or 6 times in different layers, just
yeah,
masking out exactly what effect I want on what.
yeah, exactly. As you get more familiar with the tools, I think you discover new ways to abuse them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like you'll particularly with the Viveza and like color effects and those sorts of things.
Yeah,
There's so many different ways that you can accomplish the same thing,
absolutely.
but
Yeah,
the way that they accumulate changes, and you develop an intuition for how they're going to play together,
yeah,
and yeah, that very powerful tools. I genuinely don't think my work would be anywhere near where it is had I not had access to those.
yeah. I'm all about making life easier. Yeah, this is one of the problems with Photoshop and other editing suites is that there's more than 10 ways of doing exactly the same thing for most things. But some ways are easier than others, and
Yeah.
and using plugins like that make a massive difference to workflow because you
Hmm.
can, as you said, you're just using luminosity masks. Why I spend hours doing it when you can just push a button and they're there.
Yeah, exactly. You work smarter, not harder.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have to credit also spending thousands upon thousands of dollars on computers that are fast enough to work as fast as I think.
Yeah, right.
That was basically the big jumping point for me when I finally upgraded from my old MacBook that would take 30 minutes to save a single PSD to I got the top of the line M1 Max MacBook with 64 gig of RAM. So
Yeah,
I think I click save and it's done in 2 or 3 seconds.
yeah.
Not having that impediment anymore, it's such a phenomenal improvement to the workflow.
Yeah, my desktop's due for an upgrade shortly. I'm just trying to work out the financial justification to the Minister of War and Finance.
That's one of the benefits of being a lifelong loner. You
I
don't have
guess
to justify too much to yourself. Oh,
that's it easy.
that's a dangerous thing when you get in a mood where you think I want something. Yeah, the bank account doesn't always comply. But
No, that's it. That's it. Do you do much printing in your work?
funnily enough, this year, actually on the way from that trip down to the southwest, I got my very first print of my own work for my wall.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so Aurum is the only print of my own that I own and have ever owned, and yeah, it's on my bedroom wall. But otherwise, I pretty much the only printing that I do is for other people.
Yeah.
Uh, I've just never really been able to justify the expense. I move around a lot. I've moved 12 times in 11 years. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah, no, I'm all over the shop, and having a collection of fine art prints is probably
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
also landlords don't like holes in their walls.
No, funnily enough. Yeah. Of walls, have you ever hit a creative wall where things aren't just working for you and you just got to give it all up for a while?
That's actually more prescient than you can possibly know. So my photographic career, part of the reason that it's been so long is I've given it up for more than half of that. There's
Right.
been probably four major patches there where I've basically just not looked at the camera for literal years
Wow.
and been on the edge of selling all of my gear. For one reason or another, I never get around to it, or the gear is just too much of an effort to bother with. Then something will happen and I'll be like, oh, I know how to take photos. Let's go and do that. And then that becomes the hyperfixation again for a while. So
Yeah.
I've definitely had the ADHD autistic approach to it. The lack of object permanence if you're not looking directly at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you see photography in society?
Severely undervalued, particularly once you get into the collector space. Like you look at traditional art, so the oil painters of
Sure.
traditional media, and even modern artists working with more non-traditional media. the amount of money that they can bring in for a single work, because it's
Yeah.
seen as something so manual, I guess in a way, they're seen as a definitive article where there's no way to have a replica of it. You will always have a one-to-one original.
Yeah.
And photography, we don't really have that notion. You can always reproduce a photo,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it be actually physically going and doing it again, which, as we all know, is really good in concept, but to actually shoot the same thing again another
I've
day
never
is,
been able to achieve it.
yeah, no, that's the thing.
Not
Like
in
people
landscape
think,
anyway.
yeah, no, like people think, hey, he can just go out tomorrow and get those same conditions, not knowing that it's been 2.5 years of planning for those 5 minutes that you were
Exactly.
shooting. Um, and yeah, so the inherent value of where photography sits, it's something that we're constantly surrounded by it. It's an integral piece of society. And if you took it away, it would be fundamentally and irrevocably changed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people just don't care to engage it in the same way, I think.
Yeah.
So unless you're dealing in the really high end, like competition and commercial space,
Mm.
you're dealing like the Sienna Awards or those sorts of things, or your Annie Leibovitz, all of the famous sort of iconoclast fashionistas. Yeah, we don't really get anywhere near the recognition that's due. And you do that so readily with things like the push towards AI tools, like photo generators and that sort of stuff. If it was something that people valued, why would they be going and trying to recreate it?
No, this is it. Yeah.
So yeah, everybody wants photos and photography, but very few actually want to acknowledge that it deserves a much higher
Yeah.
recognition than it gets.
Where do you think its future's going?
That's actually a very interesting point. One of the really interesting trends that I've noticed recently, especially with the younger generation, is they're pushing more towards low tech, low fidelity imaging.
Yeah.
So the old VGA cameras, like the 640 by 480, yeah, you'd get more pixels from a postage stamp. That push towards imaging on really crappy devices, I think it captures the spirit of what photography is. It's just using the tools that you have in the moment to capture something cool and show off how you're seeing the world, especially as somebody that teaches people literally how to take photos of the stars with their phone. Like astrophotography on a phone 5 years ago, if you'd said that was a thing, you know,
Impossible.
people would look at you like you'd fallen out of a tree.
You could
But
get a fuzzy shot of the moon if you were lucky.
yeah, exactly. But now we've got these legitimate imaging tools.
Yeah.
It's just accessibility is everywhere now. I That's where I see photography going, just trying to push the boundaries of what we can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of what we can do right now we've discovered, where we've already ticked off quite a lot of the really big things in terms of imaging fidelity.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, what you're seeing now, and I don't think it's just the physical limitations of the technology either, is you're not seeing anything much above 150 megapixels, I think, in camera technology. I think that's at the moment the upper level at the moment. Be the odd two or 300 megapixel camera out there. You don't need to go that far. Everyone knows you don't need to go that far. So
Yeah,
the megapixel race is pretty much done and dusted.
that's something that you see so plainly with advertising and how it's shifted in the last five
Exactly.
years. Everybody was screaming, "Oh, look at us! We've got a 42 megapixel sensor."
Exactly.
Now
Yeah.
every man and his dog has got one. It's
Yeah,
it's
in
old
their
news.
pocket.
Nobody
Yeah.
cares. Yeah, it's we're reaching that point where I think shifting back to the focus on imaging quality as opposed to ultimate imaging resolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's realized that working with a 65 megapixel raw file is a pain in the ass.
Absolutely. Yeah. To be honest, and my computer upgrade is also driving some of that. It's holding me back on the 26 megapixel, whatever it is that I've got in my Canon 6D Mark
Yeah.
II. And
Hmm.
thing is, I know that if I go to the R5 or the R6 in the Canon range or decide to swap to Sony or Fuji or someone else, and we're now talking about 50 or 60 or 100 megapixels, that will definitely drive an upgrade of the machine, because it will struggle to deal with those RAWs simply because it'll go too big, can't do it, or too big, hang on a minute.
Yeah. And that's the thing. With those files, you will experience exponential growth based on just the sheer resolution as well.
Absolutely.
Compared to what your files otherwise would be, it's just a compounding problem. Unless you're printing really large or doing really impressive
It's completely
research work,
unnecessary. Yeah.
everybody's like, oh, but billboards. You look at a billboard, they're at like 3 DPI. They literally do not have dot. Hey, I guess anything to justify a not necessarily wise investment.
Yeah, yeah. And I get there's people that do high res imaging for work. That's
Yeah,
what they work with, and it's necessary for some things. But
yeah,
for most practical applications in landscape photography or even portraiture and so forth, it gets completely unnecessary. And anything much above that 25 to 40 megapixel range is just becomes, it starts to become redundant.
exactly. So that's one thing that I've really enjoyed. In the last couple of months, I've actually just upgraded my monitor for the first time since 2009.
Oh wow!
So
I
I've
did
just
notice the
upgraded
difference.
to it. Oh yeah, so it was a 2009 Dell business monitor, a
Oh,
24-inch
blimey.
thing. So
Yeah.
basically, I've been out here winning international awards on, what Mabel was doing data entry 15 years ago on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I finally upgraded to a U-Butte BenQ 32-inch thing. One of the
Nice.
things I've really loved working on it is the 24 megapixels is a perfect one-to-one for the screen.
Yeah.
So if I'm working in portrait mode on the photos and yeah, zoom into 100%, I can see exactly what it's going to look like as an A2 print. It's
Yep.
phenomenal. Yeah, but being able to see the details that size, you actually do notice that there's not actually that much that you really need above that.
No.
It's
No.
and who's pixel peeping at the end of the day? People just want to look at
Wow.
pretty pictures.
Who wants to listen to pixel peepers to be?
That's it. 90% of the time, it's just idle criticism for the sake of criticism. There's
Exactly.
nothing deeper to it. Yeah. I think I'm very glad that we're pushing towards finding what we can do with crappy hardware.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
think that's a really valuable exercise, actually, going out and making photos with something that just doesn't have the oomph that you might have in some of the high-end gear. And to be honest, I made some really nice stuff with my old Canon, what was it, a 500D, which was the first
yeah,
entry-level camera the DSLR that I bought back
yeah.
in the day. And some of those images even with the kit lenses, to be honest, they're sharp. They're not too bad.
So I've actually had probably 3 or 4 people over the last few weeks say to me, but I can't take photos. Like you have more skill than I do and you have better gear. And it's like,
It doesn't matter.
yeah, no, like I literally am known for smartphone astrophotography. I
Yeah.
am known for shooting on the crappiest gear possible. It's not a gear question. So I've said to a few of them, send me your files, and you go through in 5 minutes of quick processing in Lightroom and just what you can bring out. And people don't realize that.
That's it.
5 minutes, you're 80% of the way to what we're doing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hey, if there's any one takeaway from anything that I'll say today, just have fun with it.
Yeah,
God, don't take it seriously if you don't need to. Life is too short to get caught up in that crap, man. Just have fun.
definitely. Speaking of having fun, what do you like to do when you're not being a photographer?
Yeah. So I engage quite a lot with music. I have always been a really big music fan. Like I've got 750 something playlists on Spotify, so they're all
Okay.
curated
Wow.
specific moods and that sort of thing. So yeah, I do quite a lot of that. I like to get out and just get into the environment where I can.
Yeah.
I do quite a lot of science communication as well.
Yeah.
My old job when I was a marine biologist, one of the things that I was doing was talking and giving information to school students. Because yeah, I was working as an ecologist in the Science and Engineering Centre up at QUT in Brisbane. Yeah, we'd get 500 odd school students come through a day and just showing them and explaining stuff. Yeah, no, I really get a buzz from being able to help people grow. So that's where I dedicate a good portion of my time. Now, wouldn't necessarily say that I follow the typical, hey, sit down and don't do anything to relax. There's too many cogs perpetually spinning. It'd be nice to slow down, but...
What's the best and or worst piece of advice that anyone's given you?
Best piece of advice that I've got photographically that's definitely worked in my favor was from my late mentor, Dale Sharp. He passed away a few years ago, actually on my birthday in 2019. And he gave me the advice that, especially when you're shooting astrophotography, which is my bread and butter, never make a photo that is a Milky Way with a foreground. Always make it so that you're shooting something that is interesting to begin with and then put the sky above it. So the sky should always be the cream. And I've always tried to do that. I think in a lot of ways that's steered me creatively the direction that I'm going. I think in a lot of ways that was part of the impetus of shining lights on things because I wanted an interesting foreground. And probably the worst advice that I've ever received is to give up.
Who told you that? Or shouldn't I ask?
Oh, hey, just random punters. Occasionally you'll hear the haters, but at the same time,
the random trolls aren't worth listening to.
And that's exactly it. I figure if you've got people telling you to stop what you're doing, you should do it harder because you're doing the right thing. If you can agitate somebody enough just by the simple act of doing something that they go out of their way to tell you to stop it, you're at least getting people's attention. Right. For better or worse, you're doing something. So, yeah, no, it's ultimately just having fun. This for therapy. As I alluded to before, I've not had the easiest days, and the photography it's a really good medium to allow you to go to places and engage with them physically, but not be consumed by it. You still have that idle time in the background to be able to contemplate.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, just have fun.
That's awesome.
Life's too short not to.
Absolutely. Who else should I get onto the podcast, Ben?
I would recommend talking to my friend that I met through the Nature Photographer of the Year, Sam Markham.
Yep, I've actually had him on.
Nice. So he was grand champion last year. We've got to be pretty good friends. Geez, who else? Andrew Phipps is probably a good one. So he gets more into the art printing and that sort of side of things as well.
Yeah.
So he's sort of growing out the small business of the fine art printing. Geez, who else? I'll come back to you. There's always
not a problem.
There's always heaps of people, mate.
I know. I'll never run out.
Yeah. Actually, Will Hudson is another good one.
Okay, great.
So here's an up-and-comer from the Grampians that's doing a lot similar to what I'm doing, working with a lot of nighttime stuff and glowy stuff. And some of the stuff he's doing, like some of the images that he's taking, the way that he's composing them, it's not really like anybody else that I've ever seen.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, once he hones his craft, he's definitely one to watch out for. But,
cool.
I've
got one more question for you, and for many people, it's the most important one I ask. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
Mate, you take a guess.
For those that can't see, Ben's wearing a Hawaiian shirt, so I'll let you deduce where he's at with pineapple.
My position on pineapple on pizza is pineapple isn't the problem. People not knowing how to prepare pineapple on pizza is the problem.
Awesome.
Hey, I know that's a bit of an anticlimax to deliver at the end, but hey.
All right. Thank you so much, Ben. It's been really wonderful having a chat and learning a lot more about you. Where can people find your work?
So I have my website, aldridge.com. I'm also on Instagram as Benjamin Aldridge, and Facebook as Benjamin Aldridge. So I got very creative with the naming. Just type in Benjamin Aldridge, you'll
Yeah,
find me.
well,
I'm the
I
only
just
one out
tacked on
there.
photography onto mine, so I know.
Yeah, I've had the fancy photographer. Ooh, this is everything is guy. That
Yeah.
was, but yeah, came back to photography in the end. It's all encompassing and does what I do, and people can spell it mostly.
All right. Thanks very much, Ben. Wonderful talking to you.
You too, Grant. Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com, along with prints, photography gear, and my 2025 calendar. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Grant Swinburne and hope to see you out shooting soon.